on the basis of lies.
And you,
so
you
we
mentioned
need to...
by implication Boris Johnson. At least Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt can agree about something. They refuse, as I say, to rule out a no-deal Brexit. Inevitably, there's increasing talk about tariff barriers, especially for sheep farmers. Even though they're among our biggest exporters to the EU, many of them have voted leave. Remain supporters consider it ironic, to say the least, that Brexit could hit hardest the very people who'd been its strongest supporters. David Gregory-Kumar explains why farmers simply can't wait for the politicians to agree a deal.
These are Brexit lambs, born on this farm near Redditch in March this year, and they'll be ready for market at the end of October, which is also when we're supposed to leave the EU. And what really worries farmers and the companies that sell the meat they produce is if we leave without a deal.
Currently, a lamb we're selling to the wholesaling market in France for about £100. If we crash out without a deal, a WTO tariff will be imposed on that lamb, which will effectively increase its cost to the customer, probably by about 40%. So all of a sudden that £100 lamb costs the customer £140.
That's the reality of life under WTO or World Trade Organization rules. Rules that automatically come into force in the event of no deal. There are lots of tariffs at different rates, but the tariffs applied to farming exports are particularly high.
Talk of a no-deal Brexit isn't some abstract idea on a farm like this one. It's affecting the decisions that the farmer is making. So he's reduced the size of his flock by about 10% to mitigate any impacts of a no-deal Brexit. And in fact, nationally, farmers are doing the same thing. The number of breeding ewes in this country is down 20% year on year.
And yet.
But you voted to leave. Did you expect to be here? Did you expect this would be the impact on your business?
Absolutely not. No. I made the decision because we're always being dictated to by Brussels, by Europe. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. We're all just getting absolutely sick of it.
So a 40% tariff, and what does that mean?
It would be catastrophic for us. There's absolutely no two ways about it. It's, you know, where it goes to for us. To be quite honest, I haven't really even thought about it.
What people say is, we'll just leave. Never mind, we'll just go, 31st October, we'll go out, and that leaves you with that big tariff.
Yes, and I say again, it's something that I've only come into connection with the past really 2 weeks. You know, I didn't know how much the car tariffs were going to be, and now looking at it again now, it is just frightening.
If no deal makes it impossible to send our lamb to Europe, at least until we get a new trade deal with the EU, well, somebody else is going to want it.
Why not just send the lamb that's not going to Europe to other countries, find new markets?
We have been this last 8 months actually looking at different parts of the world. So we've been on trips to the Far East, to Asia and to the Middle East. Two potential markets that do offer us opportunity. And there is some opportunity there, but the reality is it's not going to happen overnight. You know, we're not suddenly going to be sending all the lamb that we send to Europe on the 1st of November is suddenly going to go into the Asian market.
That said, our sheep farmers and exporters have had a Brexit boost since the referendum. As the pound has dropped, it's made our exports more competitive. But all of that could be about to change, and they're looking to politicians for answers. Boris Johnson has said GATT24 will be the solution to the thorny issue of tariffs. Jeremy Hunt is promising billions to help farmers in the event of a no deal.
You know, 6 billion that Hunt has promised to go towards this, the Treasury turn around 24 hours later and say there's no more money. So who's right, who's wrong?
How do we ride through these waves of uncertainty, whatever they might be? Because moving further down the line, there are reasons to be optimistic. You know, people need food at the end of the day, and as farmers, we manufacture food. The question really is, do we lose that base of production during a period of uncertainty that might last 2 or 3 years, or can we find a way of working our way through that?
Until a few weeks ago, Sam didn't realise the impact a no-deal Brexit could have on his farm. But by the time these Brexit lambs head for slaughter, he should have a much clearer idea of what the future holds and what our politicians are going to do about it.
David Gregory-Kumar and Jeremy Hunt has talked about a conversation he had with a Shropshire sheep farmer who fears he could lose his business altogether in the event of no deal. So why is your favoured candidate prepared to countenance no deal?
Well, what is also prepared to do is to try and find mitigation against those problems that we will have. So this is what Rupert referred to as Project Fear, but this is Project Reality for huge numbers of businesses around the country.
Are you setting aside billions for a crash-out fund for farmers as well as fishers?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's that serious?
Of course it is. What we have to be very careful about, though, is that you have state aid rules not only within the European Union but within the WTO. So what you can't do is subsidise businesses to be extra competitive into other people's markets. So you have to find a way of putting that money into possibly sourcing alternative products, so they could come up with different ideas and help them with their marketing efforts. But you can't, as I say, make them more competitive. So you've got to be quite careful. But it's the only way to mitigate for a no-deal crash-out Brexit.
Are the farmers getting over anxious about? I mean, I've heard talk about tariffs on a range of things, including ceramics as well. As an MEP, you presumably know how these things work. Yeah.
Indeed. I mean, we'll have 10%, up to 10% tariffs on cars and many other manufacturing goods, and talking 30 to 40%. But I think, you know, there is still a lot of misinformation out there. I mean, the farmer thinks that by not being part of the EU, we won't have to comply with the rules, which is not the case. We will not be able to export goods into the EU unless we meet the standards. But the only difference is we won't have any say. So you had the government and, you know, the MEPs there, and I would speak up for the farmers, for the West Midlands, when they could raise their issues, and I could raise them there, and we could get them changed. But now we won't have that. And what we will have is make our lamb very, very uncompetitive
and Rupert,
over
you
time.
have long experience of farming yourself. So what would you say to the farmer we met, Sam Jones, in that film, who feels by voting Leave he could have made the biggest mistake of his life?
Well, I don't think he has. I am a farmer. I actually have some sheep and some grain. There is a precedent for this, of course. When we joined the EC, the farmers in New Zealand and Australia had the same problem, and they've actually now found new markets, and they're booming. I was in Australia last month, and they're actually doing fantastically well.
But that will take time. It can't
Patrick,
be done by November.
Let me just finish my point, please, because this is very important. The whole point here is that I agree with Boris on this. It is possible, and it should be the responsible thing for the European Union to do, is to agree an extension under Article 24 of GATT, which is quite possible. We have equivalence of products.
But isn't that only for nations on the brink of a deal on a trade
our
agreement?
media should be covering this far more, and you should be pointing the spotlight on the European Union. The fact is, it's possible to have a continuation on our current trading terms while we negotiate a proper exit from the European Union.
That's
and
not the case. That's not true.
Nina,
Okay.
can you not
Cannot
interrupt
do,
me? Can you not interrupt me? I haven't finished yet.
Well, I'll bring
But
that
I
back.
have to say when it's
Patrick,
completely
this is
incorrect.
something that's very important, and the public need to know this.
Okay,
so,
Nina.
No, it's not possible that we can continue on the terms when we've left while we're negotiating. You know, we're either within a deal when there will be a period for implementation and we can trade on the same basis. But if we have no deal, all of that goes. Overnight, we will have tariffs and we will have to figure out how to support the farmers with a massive hit on our economy.
Can you give an assurance to the farmer that in fact he doesn't need to worry?
I don't think we can give any assurances to everybody that they don't have to worry. In life, you can't always guarantee you don't have to worry. What we're saying, and I think this is absolutely true.
But this is
the other
a
point,
level of
Patrick,
self-harm,
is that we have a
completely
£95 billion trade
Okay.
deficit with Europe. We hold all the cards, and our government has
Very
singularly
brief last
failed to
word.
negotiate properly.
Final word from Mark first and then Nina.
The real problem is that this £95 billion deficit with the whole of Europe doesn't mean that every single country has a fair share of that. We have surpluses with other countries. You need to have every country needs to agree on a trade deal. Everybody has a different viewpoint. This is rubbish.
Last word to Nina, and I challenge you to be brief if you would, Nina.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is a level of self-harm that we don't need to go through. We can just rule out no deal. Okay, and we could work an agreement with the EU that protects the farmers and protects the
One
industry.
last point,
thanks.
Patrick.
But
This does
I'm
not
afraid-
have to go to all the nation states in Europe.
Okay.
This could be agreed without that. It can be done through quality.
My
don't
thanks
understand
to you
how
all,
the
and
EU
particular
works.
thanks to you, Rupert, for being with us here today.